All right. Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with Gavin McHale. Gavin, welcome. So awesome to have you on the
Thank
show.
you. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
And, I want to start off by giving a shout out to Joe McHale because you know what? Without Joe, and it's funny is I got introduced to Joe by my friend Majid Margarivin. And I've known Majid for, oh gosh, probably 11, 12 years. And when Majid sent the email to connect Joe and myself, he because Joe's last name is spelled Marcous,
Correct. Very
and
French.
yes. And so when Majid sent that email, he said, Kevin, Joe's last name is is pronounced Marcoux, as in blue shoe Magoo. So, and I've always remembered that ever since he sent that email.
I never thought of that for Joe Marcoux, but hey, you know what? That's a good little word association.
Yes, yes. And I had another friend of mine that I interviewed for the podcast. Oh gosh, probably about a year and a half ago, and his last name is Pirates, but you would never guess that from the spelling of the name. And he when he helped me to remember how to pronounce his last name, he's like, Kevin, it's Pirates, and it sounds like pirates. And I've always remembered that too and stuff.
We- something to make note of that word association actually works
It does
and
work.
rhyming.
It
Yeah,
does work. So, and it gives you cool stories to tell later too. And
that's
so,
right. That's right.
well, and Gavin, I just want to give a shout out to you because right now you're a new father and stuff, and I want to just acknowledge that. And I've got 7 kids myself, and I know before we hit the record button, I was like, my youngest are 14 and 16 now, but yet I can remember, like it seems like just yesterday that they were newborns and stuff, and I can totally remember that. And even in some ways, I'm like, man, you know what? The last 16 years definitely flew by.
Yeah,
So,
we are trying our best to be present in it because as hard as it is, and anyone who's a parent knows how difficult the newborn stage can be. Our son is, as of this recording, just over 7 weeks old. Um, as difficult as it is, it's just magic. Like it's just incredible. You've got this tiny little human being who has no idea what's going on, and two larger human beings who also have no idea what's going on. And you just like what I found more than anything is this incredible connection with my wife in terms of just working as a team. And it's totally shifted the relationship for the better. And then you have this life that you just like love so, so, so much. And you just want to be with and support and do everything you can. So yeah, it is. These are my I have a newborn headphones just in case he freaks out. But otherwise, yeah, life is just beautiful around this time, man.
yeah, congratulations. That is
Thank
awesome.
you.
That is
Thank
awesome. Well, what I'd like to do is, I'm incredibly grateful for Joe connecting you and I because we got to have a full conversation before we ever even scheduled this interview
Yeah.
stuff. And I've just kind of
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit and I mean and what a beautiful way to get connected with somebody new because when you get connected through a mutual friend like that, man, I mean, our first conversation, we were talking just as if we'd known each other for years, all
Yeah.
thanks to Joe. And so,
Absolutely.
and what a just a beautiful testament to the power of relationships, which of course is what this podcast is all about and stuff.
Yeah.
And
And funny story between Joe and I. Joe and I live probably 20 minutes drive from one another in a small city in Canada. And I had heard his name before, And then when I got into Craig Ballantyne's world, someone you guys will hear about soon on the podcast, we actually connected. But what's funny is that like probably 80% of the times we've seen each other in person have been on in other countries and on other continents. We've seen each other in Cancun, Mexico, um, I believe Costa Mesa, California, uh, Marbella, Spain, and soon will be Dubai. So
Wow. Wow.
that's the places where Joe and I see each other most, which is pretty funny.
Wow. Yeah, you bring up Costa Mesa. That brings back memories. I lived in Costa Mesa for just a brief period. I joined the Army out of high school from '83 to '87, and I was stationed in Fort Huachuca in Arizona at that time. And for the whole time, and I traveled all over the world from there. But my buddy, who I grew up with, Scott, he joined the Marines and was
Yep.
stationed at El Toro in California before they closed that base down years ago. And so when I got out of the Army, I ended up going over to California, and we lived in Costa Mesa. Right there was an apartment complex, a big apartment complex, right on the corner of Harbor and Adams. And
Look
I
at
lived in
this.
that big, and the LA Rams had a bunch of the football players, and the cheerleaders lived in there, and good times living in Costa Mesa for sure.
That's
Yeah,
great. Yeah, we're headed back to, well, more specifically Irvine in January for Craig Ballantyne's event. I'll be
okay,
speaking there with some, Bedros will be there and Sharon Servatza and of course Craig and his crew. So that's gonna be really fun.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Good
Yeah.
group of guys for sure.
Yeah.
So. Well, why don't we start off? I want to start off by kind of turning it over to you, Gavin, so that I
Sure.
want to set a little bit of context and kind of let the listeners know a little bit about who you are and what you're all about. So why don't we turn it over to you so we can do that, and you can share about the work that you do, what kind of impact you're making, who you serve, all of that kind of stuff. And we'll just start there, setting some context, Gavin.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. Well, the first point that I'm going to share, people are going to be like, Where's this guy going?" But I will land the plane, I promise. So, um, kind of, I'm a Canadian kid, so my story begins on the hockey rink, as many do. I was a promising young goalie who made my way up pretty quickly up the ranks, and I got the opportunity to go and play in the Western Hockey League, just down the road from you in Seattle, Washington, for the Seattle Thunderbirds. And in no way was I ready for that. I was 16 years old. You know, no idea the world outside of this small city I grew up in. And I was pretty quickly headed for like the potential to play professional hockey. And over the course of one season, my second year there, it was my NHL draft year, every kid's dream to get picked and go get the opportunity to play professional hockey in the highest league possible. I managed to orchestrate a complete meltdown of epic proportions where my game went off the rails. I kind of lost control and just had no idea how to get it back on the rails. And it all really culminated on New Year's Eve in a hockey fight, which goalies don't get in fights, in front of 10,000 people in Portland, Oregon, getting my face punched in and my nose broken. And it was traded 10 days later. Tons of other things happened, over the next couple of years that basically sent me back to, losing my opportunity to play professional hockey. Um, Fast forward 10 years, I went to university, played a little bit of hockey there, but again, same pattern. It didn't really work out. Got a degree in kinesiology, became a personal trainer. And 10 years later, I was trying to build, a personal training business online.
Okay.
It was kind of before it was cool, right? I wanted to make a little more money in a little less time, and signed up for all the strategies and the tactics and tried to learn the copywriting and all these things. And um, it never really seemed to pan out for me over that year or two. And it wasn't until I recognized that these were both, this hockey pattern and this business growth pattern were kind of parallel lines, and that the problem was looking me right in the mirror, and it was me. And it was my belief set, my narratives, my stories, my identity about, myself, how I fit into the world and all these things. And when I got the opportunity to learn that and I did the work on myself, it really was this profound impact on me, and started to be able to build my business. And then just before COVID hit, actually, almost perfect timing, I stepped in more into this online role of, building, helping other personal trainers build their businesses because I had done something that many of them hadn't done and couldn't do. And then COVID just put that right at the forefront, building an online business. And then, snowballed into the opportunities that I have now. And now I've really transitioned into becoming, for lack of a better term, a personal development or a mindset coach. And a lot of people will
Okay.
call me kind of a secret weapon behind the scenes of a lot of businesses where I help the clients, or I help our clients get past their own limiting beliefs and get past their own stories and learn about themselves and where they're holding themselves back, and help them to get out of their own way, make the money they deserve, and have the success that they know that they should have based on their skill set. So that's essentially what I do now. You could call it business coaching, you could call it life coaching, but at the end of the day, I'm helping mainly business owners and high performers get out of their own way. And my hope is that, much like the work you do, that the ripple effect will help their clients, will help their families, will help their businesses, help their teams, all of those things. And that's kind of the origin of it, because 5 years ago, I would have laughed at myself, the stuff that I'm doing now, because I was just so scared of it. And I thought,
Yeah.
this is stupid. You don't need this. You just need the next strategy, tactic, copywriting, Instagram hack, right? Turns out everything I needed was within me. And I needed to figure that out for myself. And when I did, it's kind of like the personal trainer who used to be overweight. I can relate to my clients, right? I can relate to what they went through because I was there. I struggled with the same stuff they're struggling with. So it's clearly, I know it's the work that I was meant to do, and I'm just beyond excited to get the opportunity to do it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I hear you share your story, and I see so much of myself in your story, and how I've just like, wow, you know what? The work that I do now, it was there all along. I was
Right.
capable, but I had to grow into being the person who can just really, who can facilitate strategic partnerships that are worth millions of dollars and stuff.
Yeah.
And really, it's the revenue side of it for me is kind of a like a metric that I just use to help gauge effectiveness, because it's not the revenue that
Exactly.
gets me jazzed, it's the impact, and the revenue is the natural organic byproduct of making a big impact.
Such
And
a beautiful way to put it. I actually saw something this morning that was just, it hit me that, a lot of growing a business or building, this thing that we're building, whatever we want to call it, success, life, is not about doing, it's about becoming.
yeah,
And you mentioned, you had to become that person. And I think that takes hardships, it takes hard-earned lessons, and it takes mistakes. And that's what allowed me to be the person who became this person who could handle the work that I'm doing and could deliver it to other people and help them, get what they want, which is, like you said, it's that's the stuff that gets us jazzed. I could talk
yeah,
about it all day.
yeah, totally, yeah, yeah. Okay, well, so now that we've got a little bit of context set, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of our listeners. So, Gavin, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And Gavin, I'm totally stoked to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, I've got a really cool story for you.
Awesome.
And the answer is yes, absolutely, 100% yes. So um, myself and this gentleman were in a mastermind together in 2016.
Okay.
Again, this was this first kind of time that I was trying to grow this personal training thing and build this online business. So December 2016, so it's kind of close to Christmas. There was a live event in Venice Beach, California. So again, we come back to Los Angeles area, Venice Beach, California, and I had no money. Like I had no money. So I've invested in this mastermind that I couldn't afford. And then he says, "Hey, come on out to Venice Beach and we'll do a little 2-day mastermind with you guys. We'll bring in some speakers and all this stuff." Okay, well, so I paid for the flight and figured that out and I slept on someone's couch. I slept on his assistant's couch. There was like 5 of us that stayed in her apartment because I just couldn't afford it.
Okay.
But I miscued on the days. So there was one night where I didn't have anywhere to stay. She was leaving town. I couldn't stay at her place. Everyone else was leaving, and I didn't realize this. I had booked my flight for the day after. So I went to him. I said, "Hey, like I need a place to stay." And like all the hotels around are crazy expensive. And so he just in front of everybody, there's about 30 people in the room. He stopped everybody. He said, "Hey, Gavin's looking for a place to stay. Does anybody have a couch or anywhere where he can stay?" And to take it back a minute, the first day there was one guy in the room who everybody was, dressed normally, t-shirt, pants, whatever. This guy shows up in like Santa Claus pants and a Santa hat, and he's just bouncing around the room, and he's just like an out there guy. And so he's there, and the guy who's facilitating the event asked this question, and I distinctly remember thinking, I hope it's not that guy. I like anybody but that guy
Anybody but
with
the Santa guy.
with the Santa hat on, because I don't. And his hand shoots up, and he goes, "Oh, I lived just down the street in Venice, and I've got my roommate there, but there's a couch you can absolutely stay." And I was like, come on, right? But I was like, okay, fine. Anyway, so this guy's name is Xander Fryer, and he had just quit a $250,000 a year job as an engineer to start a coaching business. He had no clients. He had, maybe a couple clients at the time. He just quit his job and was like, it wasn't fulfilling me. It wasn't what I wanted to do. And so we went to dinner after, and I jumped in his car and we started talking, and it was like, this guy's on a whole nother level. Like I was like, I thought that I was like doing something well by like, joining a mastermind and things like that. This guy was like on a whole nother level. And we had a great chat on the way to dinner. We had dinner. We had a great chat on the way to his place. We get to his place, and I'm sitting thinking, oh, maybe, just a good old hockey boy from Canada. Maybe we'll have a few beers. Maybe we'll hang out a little bit. And he says, "Hey, I got to hit the hay here. I'm up early." Um, and I was like, "Oh, what are you up for?" And he's like, "I just get up early. Like I'm up early to get up early." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Kind of weird." So I was like, "Okay, whatever." And he kind of shows me around his house, and he shows me his room. And in his room, he has a book, like a book that he has put his own cover on it. Like
Okay.
he drew a book cover of the book that he wanted to write. And he said it was just, a random book. And he had put a book cover over it that was the book that he wanted to write. Um, and I was like, "What's that?" He's like, "Oh, that's the book I'm going to write in, 5 years or whatever." And I was like, "What?" And then you go out, and his computer was in the main room where I was sleeping, and he had one of those fake $1 million bills, and he had a whole bunch of post-it notes with like affirmations and stuff around it. And I'm like, "What is going on with this guy?" And so the next morning, I wake up. It's like 5 o'clock to go to the bathroom, and he's sitting in the corner meditating at like 5 a.m. Then, as I'm going back to bed, he's like, "Hey, I'm just going to head out to the gym." He's going to the gym. It's a Saturday morning. We've just had a mastermind event for 2 days. And then he's back. He's working on his computer by the time I actually get out of bed. So he's already done all this stuff. And I was like, ooh, like it was this punch in the face of what was truly required to get to where I wanted to go. And I can still distinctly remember all of this stuff to this day. And the fact is, so and this is where it'll connect to all the other connections that I've made from him or how it changed my life, is over the next year, so 1 year's time, he, at the time when I met him, was probably making, call it zero, essentially zero. He was living off his savings. By that time, the next year, or actually it was like June of 2018, so about 18 months,
Okay.
he was on $1 million run rate. He was
Wow.
making $1 million, 83,000 plus per month.
Mhm.
I, on the other hand, in that time, went from making, 6, 7,000 a month that as a personal trainer to maybe squeaking past 8 or 9,000 a month.
Okay. Okay.
So almost no change, right? And when you look at it, the difference was the things that he was doing every single day, the work that he was putting in on himself. Of course, I didn't recognize it at the time. So at that time in 2018, I decided to hire him as my coach. And he had a business coaching program for business wellness business owners who wanted to build their business. So I was a little bit outside of his ideal client, but I was pretty close. And the first thing he said to me was essentially, you got to take responsibility. You're the problem. And I did not like it at all. I was, every other business coaching program I had been in, I had been in like three or four. It was like, hey, here's the strategies, here's the tactics, here's how you get better at these things. And he was like, yeah, none of that matters. You don't, you need to change your mindset. You need to change your subconscious beliefs. And that essentially set up what I currently do as a coach because he forced me and ever so gently forced me to do this work. But the other thing is the people that I have met through working with him. So anyway, I'll leave it there for now. And then I feel like I should be drawing this like this spider web of people that I have met and all these opportunities that I've got from that one meeting of this crazy guy in a Santa hat in a room
Yeah.
in Venice Beach.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, well, and kudos to you for like, even though, it was a little uncomfortable because you're like, okay, let it be anybody but the Santa
Yeah,
guy.
literally anybody but him.
and but you're like, okay, well, it's the Santa guy, so we're in, because I need a place to stay, and so let's do that. Let's dig into some of the stuff that transpired. So you spent this one night at his place. He let you stay
Yep.
there, and so the next day, did you fly back home? I mean, how did the relationship progress
Yeah.
there?
So flew back home
Okay.
and it was interesting because so during that time, this mastermind wasn't very well run. It was kind of
Okay.
before people really knew what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who ran it didn't really know what he was doing. He knew that he knew some stuff, but he didn't really know what he was doing. So we didn't really get the opportunity to connect that much. We stayed in touch maybe a little bit through Facebook and things. And Xander had a couple of tough things happen in his life that kind of pulled him away from this group. So the other meetups that we did in the future, he wasn't there. He
Okay.
kind of basically he realized quicker than me that this mastermind wasn't great, and he basically went on to do other things. He did a lot of work with, learned from Jack Canfield a lot, and joined some other masterminds that were just serving him better.
Uh huh.
So, we didn't really stay in touch so much as I was watching him from a distance and watching
Okay.
something go right. And it was, like I said, a year and a half later, I was actually having challenges as we all do, in my relationship with my now wife. And my business wasn't going the way I wanted it to. And I just had this compulsion to just like, you know what? Xander's the guy. And I reached out to him. It was July 4th, 2018. And I
Okay.
remember him getting back to me on WhatsApp and saying, hey, I appreciate you reaching out and wanting to coach with me. Um, it's July 4th. Just let me kind of like enjoy the day here, and I'll get back to you, and I'll send you some stuff, and we'll book a call. Cause it was just like, I was just like, I need to make a change because I'd seen from afar what he was doing just through social media and things like that. And I was like, this is what I want. I tried a whole bunch of other things, and it was just like, hey, what do you think about me working with you? And he's like, I think it'll be a good fit. And when we did the call, I actually still remember this. it was the first like actual real like sales call that I had been, the client on.
Okay.
And I remember several times trying to kind of pull him off track, unconsciously, of course, because I was uncomfortable. I knew what he was doing. I knew that he was, going to pitch me. He was asking me uncomfortable questions, and I kept saying, "Oh yeah, you're doing really good at this. This is awesome. Like you're clearly, the stuff that we learned in the mastermind, you're doing really good at it." And he kind of kept on, kept on, kept on, and then he just held me to this higher standard than I had been holding myself. And it was like, are you ready to invest? Let's make this happen. And I just remember that like he was a pro. Like he wasn't messing around. And I think for so long I was like, oh, I'll just mess around and it'll be fun and it'll be easy and I don't want to get uncomfortable. And it was basically, his whole message, he was living it, was you have to get uncomfortable to get to where you want to go. And you're going to have to ask yourself questions that you don't want to ask and that you've never asked yourself. And therein lies the value, right? As we all know that you have to get uncomfortable to
Yeah.
grow.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So you alluded to the fact that this one relationship with this one individual, Xander Fryer, led to so many other
Yeah.
relationships. And so let's just kind of take a look and see some of how that transpired and what happened from there.
Yeah. So if you look at, like, I'm going to start from now and we can work our way back.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so I do coaching for two bigger businesses. I'm like a contract coach for two seven-figure businesses.
Okay.
One of those is Craig Ballantyne, Early to Rise, someone who we both know. Um, and the other one is a guy named Charlie Johnson. He's the one who's located in Dubai. His business is called Seven Figure Scaling Systems.
Okay.
Both of those relationships came as a result of my original, investment in Xander's program. So Xander, um, I met a guy named Rusty Osborne. He was another client in the program at the time.
Okay.
And Rusty, after a couple of years, decided to take a sales role with Craig Ballantyne. So he became one of his closers.
Mhm.
And what's funny is I was struggling a bit in my business coaching business. And I reached out to Rusty and I said, hey, man, if any personal trainers come to do calls with you and you're closing for Craig Ballantyne, just send them my way instead of closing them for Craig's business. And I'll pay you more than whatever Craig's paying you for his commission. And he actually said to me, Rusty said to me, you know what? Like, I'm really happy working with Craig. I really enjoy working with Craig. And I don't want to mess that up. And in fact, we have a coaching position open that I think you'd be perfect for. And I was like,
Mm. Mm.
and he sent me the job description. It was like, holy smokes, this is like literally like I nail every one of these. I've been following Craig for years
Mhm.
and knew how good he was. So I jumped at the chance. So there's the Craig Ballantyne job,
Uh-huh.
which
Uh-huh.
I thought, oh, I'll just do this for a while till my business gets back on its feet. And I fell in love with the people on the team and with working with a team and with my clients. And it was just kind of this perfect fit that so much so that I'm still there today. And then it was just over a year ago so Charlie Johnson was a client of Craig's,
Okay.
and I got to do a little. Craig actually said, this guy needs some mindset work. Like he's really hard on himself. You should take some calls with him. And like I knew this guy was like super successful coach, and I was super nervous about the call. And I did the call at like 6 a.m. my time because Dubai is 12 hours ahead, and like all
Okay.
this stuff. And just like we had a couple of really great mindset calls, Charlie and I, and through a number of circumstances, it turned out that Charlie was looking for somebody to come in and do some mindset coaching for his clients. And Craig was like, you need to hire Gavin. Get, Gavin has enough space, I'm sure, in his calendar to work with you. So Craig kind of made the recommendation to Charlie to hire me. So now my kind of two biggest contracts are Craig and Charlie, who both came indirectly from that relationship that I created with Xander and from the people that I met through there. And there's more, but like those are kind of the two big ones that like
Yeah.
really today 75% of my income is thanks to that original connection.
Yeah. Wow. What a beautiful testament to the power of relationships right there.
Yep.
And not only that, even how, you I, when you suggested to the gentleman, hey, instead of sending leads to
Right.
them, just send them to me.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I can't do that. I really value the relationship that I have with Craig and these guys.
Yep.
But you know what? They're looking for somebody, and you might be just the right fit for what they're looking for and stuff.
Yeah.
And
And what's great, like Rusty's moved on from that role. He's running his own business now. But he and I still keep in touch every month. We have a standing monthly call, and I would call him one of my closer friends,
yeah,
which is really cool.
yeah, yeah. And isn't I mean, I can tell you, I have had, well, so, you mentioned this upcoming event that you've got with, uh, with Craig and Bedros and Sharon, and I know all three of those guys.
Hmm.
And I met them all in Genius Network, and they're just impeccable men. They're just the kind of guys that are, that there is trust in both uh, character and incompetence with those three guys.
Yeah.
That they are just world class at what they do, and also the character side. That what, when they say something or they make a commitment to somebody, you can damn sure know that that commitment is going to be followed through on and stuff with those guys. Yeah,
Yeah. And in fact, what I've learned, especially with Craig, I'm not as close and connected with those other guys. Obviously, met them, seen them speak and things like that. But with Craig, like half of Craig's life is just thinking about how can I connect people, much like yours. How can I connect people? How can I help? How can I add value to this person's life? And I always like to say, and you might be the only exception or the only person with more is I don't know anybody who more people know and more people owe a favor to than Craig. They're like, oh, I owe Craig a favor, right? So anytime Craig says to somebody, like for example, Craig reaches out and to somebody and says, hey, Gavin should be on your podcast, even if I have no business based on my audience size being on the podcast, Craig recommended me.
yeah,
So it's like, they're like, well, I owe him a favor, I'll do it. And then, we obviously have a great connection and all these things. So it's, that's that value of it. And what's even better is when I knew that I was going to become a father, I had someone like Craig who is now he's older than me, but he's a father. He's got three kids under three. Um, to really be a role model for me in terms of I wanted to see more people who were super healthy, super successful, and also, but primarily dads, present fathers, present husbands, uh, who could kind of like show me the way. And he was definitely one of them. So
yeah,
and Bedros, represents the same thing. Like a lot of people in Craig's world represent the same thing. So I was able to have those role models as I was embarking on this new journey as well.
yeah, yeah. Wow, wow. Well, I know you alluded to that you had even met more people. So I have no idea how many people there are in life that you want to talk about and honor here and stuff. But I want to make sure that I don't leave anything uncovered that you want to, honor and stuff. So,
Yeah, sure. So, further through this time in this mastermind with Xander Friars called High Impact Coaching for anybody who wants to check it out. Um, I myself and three others created a mini mastermind out of it.
okay.
Um, that was right around the time COVID hit. So April 2020, we created this, And we have connected on Zoom every month since then. So for 4 years now.
Wow.
Um, and that's with Zach White, Leslie Thornton, and Brooke Ritchie. And what's funny is that Leslie and Brooke were both absolutely crushing it in their businesses at the time, and Zach and I really wanted what they had there. And Zach and I were both in relationships, and both Brooke and Leslie wanted to have those relationships. So it was kind of this perfect fit. They wanted to have two men who kind of represented what they were looking for in a man, and we wanted to have two, this in this case, women who represented what we wanted in business. And they were doing it in slightly a different way than the like rah rah hustle grind push push push. So it was this perfect fit. And, Zach and I have now found success in business that we were looking for. And both of them have found their partners that they were looking for. And,
Wow.
we continue to connect, which, monthly calls, I get to connect with each of them one on one. There's just been so many other great things that have come from that. Again, people that I would consider close friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, the two people who were working for Xander at the time, a woman named Hannah Hermanson and a guy named Joshua Church. Both of them, like Hannah and I, still connect monthly. Again, just to chat, just to hang out, just to talk business. And Joshua Church was actually, I hired him as a coach of mine in around 2022 as a one-on-one coach, and we still keep in touch. And then, of course, that connection to Craig. And Craig has given me tons of connections for other speaking gigs and speaking opportunities at live events, which have then connected me with people who have become my own one-on-one clients. So, I get when I go and speak at events, a lot of people generally like what I have to say. I change their perspective on things, so they want to become one-on-one clients. So all of these things have kind of come to, if I think about the landscape of the people that I call closest friends in business in particular, the landscape of the way that I make money and the people through which I'm able to make my money, it all started with
Yeah.
that one decision to
Yeah.
hire Xander. Like it
Yeah.
really did. Because also the
Wow.
basis of everything that I do, like what I actually do, started with Xander challenging me and asking me to look inward as well.
Yeah.
So that's the value right there. What is it now? That was in 2018. So 6 years, almost 7 years down the line, that's
Yeah.
how much your life can change.
That's right. And so you are still to this day. Well, so what, so you had hired Xander. What period of time were you and Xander working together in that regard? So how long did you work? Was he hired by you?
I have a funny story there.
Okay.
So I hired him in July of 2018, and his
Okay.
original course was about 8 weeks long. So you paid and you got 8 weeks worth of support.
Okay.
After about 4 weeks was when he told me that I needed to take responsibility, look in the mirror, and
Uh
I
huh.
essentially quit. I was like,
Oh, gotcha.
I
Okay.
was like, I was too scared to do it. I was too scared
Uh-huh.
to, get out of my comfort zone, and I just kind of stopped
Yep.
booking calls and all that stuff. But what's cool is he had this Facebook group, and I stayed in the group, and I just kind of stayed in there, just, on the outskirts.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2019, summer of 2019, I was really feeling like I needed to make a shift out of the fitness world and again into the business world or into another world. And so I re-engaged. I just kind of like re-engaged in the Facebook group, started looking at the course material again. And that week, Xander announced his first ever in-person event, like
Ah,
live event in September of 2019 in San Diego. And like that week I bought the ticket and I did it. And at that event I signed up for a 1 year in Xander's mastermind. And that's, so 2019, fall of 2019 through fall of 2020, kind of through the most tumultuous time in a lot of businesses,
yeah.
I was a part of Xander's mastermind, and really he helped get me through the changing landscape with COVID and all of those things. So
Yeah.
he was officially my coach for that time, and then I took a bit of time away, and then of course I hired Joshua, who was on his team, and stayed in the world, and then in 2020. end of 2021 was when I came on with Craig's team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We have these people who come into our lives that, like in this case, Xander, for a period of time, he was actively engaged in your life because you had hired him for that role. And yet, now you don't actively have that arrangement right now.
Right.
But
Right.
yet, things are still happening
Yeah.
here and now today as a result of, because that relationship was started, that engagement was started, that you're still, and not only you benefiting, but there's a
Yeah.
whole lot of other people that get to benefit too. And when we
Yeah.
start looking at that big picture of how many lives have been impacted because of you and this one individual, Xander, man,
Yeah.
you start looking at that, and it gets mind-boggling when you start thinking about the number of lives that have been impacted and that will continue to be impacted going forward from here.
Which is that really is to me the definition of the ripple effect.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's I once remember him saying when he was telling me about like sales and how difficult sales can be and having difficult conversations with people, he said, because I still remember that sales call that we had. He said, I'm willing to have someone not like me in the moment if it means I can change their life.
yeah,
And in that moment, I was, so uncomfortable on the sales call and really, probably wouldn't have said that I particularly liked him. But
mm-hmm.
look at where we are now,
Yeah,
because he decided to hold me to a higher standard. He was willing to, and he was willing to also in the coaching to say what needed to be said instead of shying away from it. And I think I think a lot of people are afraid in their relationships of saying what needs to be said. They know what needs to be said. So I think there's value not only in the connection that we made, but also in the fact that inside of the container of that connection, there was this level of holding me to a higher standard and truly saying what needed to be said. And a
yeah,
lot of people say now that me as a coach, I'm very outspoken and I'm not afraid to say what needs to be said. And I think that's because of that influence.
yeah,
Because in my past life, a lot of times I would just be agreeable. Like growing up with middle class parents, just be agreeable. Like don't cause any problems, don't have any real conversations, just keep it shallow and get through the night.
yeah,
Um, but having real conversations has, allowed me to deepen relationships, allowed me to have more success, and it's all thanks to that. So I think there's tons of value in that too. It could have just been another relationship, another business coach that I hired, but I think because of the next step, it was something greater than that.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, Gavin, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. And for anybody that's listening in on this, going, man, Kev, I really like Gavin. I love the way Gavin shows up. How can they find out more about you or the work that you're doing? I mean, any websites, any resources we can share with them?
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. So where I'm spending the majority of my energy right now is on YouTube, actually.
Okay.
So I'm creating a weekly video for YouTube at Coach Gavin McHale, or you can just put Gavin McHale in the YouTube search bar.
Okay.
If you go to my YouTube, you'll see that there's a lot of pushing of this book that's behind me called Consciouspreneur.
Uh huh.
Um, Consciouspreneur is about to launch very soon, and right now. So if you're listening to this before the book comes out, you can get on the pre-sale list,
Okay.
and that gives you a whole bunch of free modules and trainings and things like that, plus first access and probably better pricing on the book. If you're listening to it after the book comes out, you'll be notified exactly how you can buy the book and all that stuff, and you'll get tons of free resources beyond that.
Very.
So, Consciouspreneur is the book that's coming out. What to do when the hard work stops working. I tell my story, my hockey story, and a lot of cool other things. There's actually a story and a photo of Xander and I in there, and if you want to connect where most people do these days, I am on Instagram and I'm posting most days some shorts and some clips from my YouTube videos and things like that at Gavin McHale 1. You can check me
Okay.
out there, but those are the best places to find me.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, once again, Gavin, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation and just share your experience and your story around this topic of relationships. Because I'll tell you what, I like I shared at the beginning. What the goal is always really simple. I want to give you the opportunity to share your story and your experience, but I also want to just inspire our listeners
Yes.
who are also entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs, and just inspire them to place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their own lives. And with your help, we certainly delivered on that today. So, Gavin, thank you so much. Really appreciate you, man.
Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on here and share all this. It's really cool to be able to remind myself of this value that I got from this one relationship.
Absolutely.